Welcome to Embedded. I am Alicia White. I am here with Christopher White, and today we will once again be talking about the happiness of cows with Chris Svec.
Hello, Chris Svec.
Hey, you too. How are you doing?
Good. How is your cow?
My cow is happy, as is the cheese or the milk, or I forget where that came from.
Happy cows make happy cheese. Happy cheese comes happy milk. You're right. Could you tell us about yourself?
I'd love to. I'm an embedded software engineer, and I currently work at iRobot. I used to be a chip designer, so I've done a lot of the hardware up to the software stack. And I apparently was on the show a while ago, and we talked about happiness of cows and empathy and a few other things. And I'm here today to hopefully kind of continue that conversation in a slightly new direction.
Cool. That's my plan too. First, we have lightning round. What do you have? What are your questions?
What are my questions?
His.
What are his questions?
Yeah.
Oh, what are your questions? You have questions?
Wait, am I supposed to have questions for you?
You've been on the show enough.
Did you just break the show?
I just broke. Oh, okay. Cat or hack?
Hack, not a cat person.
What is the date of the party?
Oh, the date of the party? What is the date of the party?
Yes.
September 7th?
That's correct. Will you be attending? Wait, I'm supposed to trade off with you. See, you broke the show. Will you be attending?
No, unfortunately, I will not be attending.
Should people, such as yourself, who are not attending, throw their own local parties?
I have actually considered doing that over here on the East Coast.
That's kind of weird. Favorite coding robot?
Favorite coding robot? Does one that I code for work count?
Anything. You can interpret the question however you want.
I'm going with Roomba.
Favorite roding cobot?
Sounds like so much of a robot that helps you.
Christopher
rodeo?
put that one in. I'm not taking ownership of
Robot Copilot. Your favorite robot Copilot.
Oh,
favorite robot co-pilot. Who was the one in the Navigator, Flight of the Navigator? Who was that
That was Pee Wee Herman.
Flight of the Navigator?
Well, he played it, so we're going to go with that.
All right.
okay. I guess it's appropriate to ask this. What is the favorite movie you haven't seen?
The favorite movie I haven't seen.
We'd ask about the movies you have seen, but since we have talked about that before, this time it seemed better to just say what was your favorite movie that you haven't seen.
Wow, that's tough. There's so many ways to interpret that question. I'm going to go with the unreleased Star Wars Episode 9.
Okay.
All right.
It's cheap, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Cheap.
What is it that you say about your father when he's using an axe inappropriately?
Yeah,
A chainsaw inappropriate.
A chainsaw. Uh-huh.
We swapped questions, didn't we?
Yes.
You got to be careful with the chainsaw question.
Okay, go ahead. What is it?
It is a Czech phrase that is let me try again. Tatu si rižno jako krava, which translates loosely to "my dad cut himself like a cow."
A lot of cows going on.
Yeah, that's actually true. That's true. Not a flattering angle, perhaps, but yes.
Okay. I have a couple of announcements. We're having a party here in Aptos in California near Santa Cruz. And if you want an invite, you need to go to embedded300.eventbrite.com. And then you sign up there, you say you're coming, maybe volunteer to help out. And then the week before, you get an invite, which you will need to get into the party.
Cool.
Also, people wanted mugs. So I made mugs. They're on Zazzle. They're kind of expensive. We don't really get much money from them. But you wanted mugs. So I did it.
So buy them.
They look good. I've seen them. I have a question. Mm-hmm. Why is it embedded 300? Why is that the URL? What's the significance of 300?
300th episode celebration.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about...
We've done this 300 times.
Well, we haven't yet.
We will have done this 300 times.
Soon we will have done this 300 times.
259 too many. All right.
One more announcement related to the party.
Right.
and related to Svec, iRobot, where Svec works, has generously donated some prizes that are the Root coding robot, which is teaching kids how to code, and they are surprisingly adorable. So yeah, bring a cat, bring a hack. No, wait, don't bring a cat. You can actually, but don't. Bring something cat related.
Don't bring your cat unless you want it to get lost in the forest.
Wear a cat themed something. I have no idea how we're giving out prizes. I admit it now.
Come up with something.
Okay, now on to this show. So you introduced yourself as a senior embedded software engineer, or just an embedded software engineer, but you've been doing this for a while, and you have a new role as part of your job, Chief Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo.
Oh, I only wish that I could have a carriage and some mice to do my bidding, but no. I have a slightly new role. It's kind of I guess technical lead is the title, but basically it's I'm getting to kind of turn my attention more towards sort of higher level architecture. How do we sort of redesign, or not redesign necessarily, but how do we design and how do we evolve our code and our code base to making it more maintainable, more extensible, fewer bugs, kind of the motherhood and apple pie stuff. But it's kind of a step back from the day-to-day coding, for a story, for a particular sprint or for a particular robot, but instead, overall, how can we make the organization move faster, more efficiently with fewer bugs? And so yeah, Chief Bippity Boppity Boo. I like it. I'm going to go with that.
Okay, so how do you make your organization move faster with fewer bugs?
It's pretty easy. You stop counting bugs. You stop counting bugs, and then there's zero, and so that's done. And the moving faster part is you stop thinking and you just code. You just sit down and you code all the time, and you stop. No thinking, no design, no documentation. You just go.
How long have you been in this job?
Actually, I'm looking for a new job. No. I mean, it's in fact the complete opposite of that. So, there's all kinds of big principles out there with, how to structure software, how to do architecture. There's clean code, there's clean architecture. There's, tons of books out there. When I was talking about this with my management and kind of talking about this role and sort of a need to step back and sort of design our code, not just for the next year, but for the next 3 years and 5 years and beyond. I kind of sat down, and I typically try to start with a clean sheet of paper when I do these kinds of things. I try to start, okay, if I had sort of a magic wand, if I am in fact the Chief Bippity Boppity Boo, and I could wave a magic wand, what would I want? And the goals that I came up with are basically fewer bugs and easier and faster new feature development.
Isn't that everybody's goal?
It is everybody's goal, but I don't know that people are allowed to sort of have that goal and work towards that goal on a regular basis. And
certainly it's rare that somebody's in charge of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's you're in charge of shipping this product next month, and your job, if you make any decision and there's any trade-offs, the decision you need to make needs to be in favor of shipping it, August 1st or whatever it happens to be. Instead of, oh, by the way, we plan to be in business for the next 50 years and we want our software to let us continue making changes that we have even thought of over those 50 years. And then maybe the code base, obviously it's going to change a heck of a lot in 5 years, forget about 50 years, but how can we be more intentional about writing fewer bugs, creating fewer bugs, and making it easier and faster to create new features, and have that be a top line goal instead of shipping product A and product B on whatever deadlines they have.
When we were at the Computer History Museum recently, I saw a bunch of things from IBM early days, and all of it was centered around think with an exclamation point. And it was what they were exhorting their employees to do.
Sort of rude.
Well, I thought it was kind of nice, actually, because sometimes we're just told to code and not think.
Yeah, but if you got that as a code review comment.
What were you thinking?
Are you returning to those days where you're telling people that they should be thinking more and thereby getting more, think harder, work less? What is it?
Work harder, not smarter. Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Other way around. That is in fact what it turns into when schedule crunch comes down, isn't it? Though, like, don't think about it, just do it. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to do the opposite. Hopefully, now you've got it turned around in my head. I'm not even sure what the right way is.
I always say it the sarcastic way, so that's why I can't say it the right way. Clearly.
Work smarter, not harder.
I see. Yes, that's what you want to do. Yeah.
So many moons ago, many episodes ago, 1.5 billion years ago, you came on the show and talked to us about empathy-driven development.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what you said? Can you summarize it?
Sure. I can. Go back to that episode. What episode was, like, in the 70s or something? It was called Happy Cows. And what I said was, what I still believe is that to make better products and to make a better working environment and just really better everything, we should have empathy. We as the software engineers should have empathy for the customer, which is sort of a no-brainer, and that's common enough advice that you hear in industry. But the slightly nuanced piece that I sort of was talking about is that we should also have empathy for each other as software engineers, our fellow colleagues, whether they're junior or senior, and we should also have empathy for our future selves. And what I mean by empathy here is think about who's going to have to be consuming your code. The compiler has to consume your code. We know it has to compile, probably without warnings, hopefully, and it has to run and do pretty much the right thing. But the compiler is kind of a necessary but not sufficient consumer of the code for what I think is a better long-term experience for the developers and for the customers eventually, and for the kind of the software to live on and have everyone enjoy working with it. So when you write code, you should comment it and document it and write it in a non-clever way, to quote Dennis Jackson from the show, and think about who is going to have to pick it up after you have either moved on or after you've forgotten about it. If you yourself pick up your code in a year, you probably don't remember why you did some funny things in the code. And so you should have left yourself either some comments or some breadcrumbs, or redesign it so it's not clever, so it's not sort of opaque, and so that you can see what's going on with it. So that's what I mean by empathy-driven development. We should consider empathy as a first-rate design goal of the code.
And
does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
Before?
Yeah. It's sort of be excellent to each other, and not just the customer, but to your fellow developers.
And yourself.
And to also make sure that you don't be mean to them when they make mistakes. That's part of empathy, is acknowledging fallibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, if you are someone who is perfect, you should still be able to imagine that, well, if I made a mistake, how would I want to be treated? I think the other way, kind of a positive side of that too, is that you should be free with praise. And if you see someone doing something well, or if someone helped you, or if someone explained something, or if you see code that, wow, that's a really succinct and clear way to put something that, I don't think I could have explained that clearly, thank someone for it. Thank them for their effort, thank you for their time, thank them for their insight. And that's another way to sort of build positive. I don't want to get like super touchy-feely, but the fact is we're emotional creatures, and getting some positive feedback on your team or at work makes everyone a little bit happier. It makes us enjoy our jobs more.
By the way, if you get an email from me at 3:00 on a Tuesday, it's not saying thank you. It's not because I have a reminder that says thanks somebody. I who would do that? That's so weird. So going beyond...
Who are you talking to?
Anybody who gets an email from me thanking them on 3 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Should know that really... Of course it wasn't planned ahead on a scheduled
Gotcha.
repeating.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry to distract. So the empathy-driven development makes sense. But that was a few years ago. And you've been thinking more about hope. I get empathy, but hope?
Yeah, hope kind of fell out of me trying to figure out what to do with this sort of more architectural, technical lead role. And as I was thinking, okay, motherhood and apple pie, fewer bugs and easier and faster new feature development. Like that ain't rocket science. Like there's no new real thinking there. But so I thought, okay, how do you how do you get there? Now, there's a billion books out there about it, but again, I just start with a clean piece of paper and I'm thinking, all right, if I'm going to sort of live in this future, let's imagine that I live in a future where we have fewer bugs created and easier and faster new feature development, then what do I hope for? What I hope it looks like is that if I get a new feature to develop, or, new story or a new task or whatever your workplace calls it, then I will have a pretty easy time figuring out what file to open, what part of the architecture this new feature goes into, what other parts of the architecture or the code, the new feature interacts with. I'll have a set of tests to run it with. I'll have an easy way, an infrastructure to write new tests. And if they break, then I will be able to see why they broke and then fix them. And then when I do a commit and a pull request or whatever code review system you might have at your workplace, that my colleagues who don't know exactly what I just implemented will be able to look at my pull request, look at my commit and say, oh, okay, I see that, Chris edited this file to add his new feature, and it's pretty clear to me how he did it in 10 lines or 20 lines or 100 lines of code. And I see that this unit test over here broke because the new feature interacts with some older feature in a weird way. And I see that, it got fixed by changing one more file. And it sort of makes sense. There's not 50 files to go hunting through. You don't have sort of accidental complexity of where, you want to change a message that goes from one processor to another, and you have to edit 17 different header files because the data is all kept in slightly different formats for different chips. None of that kind of stuff, and that it would be reasonably straightforward. Then your code gets merged and the feature works as expected. There's no regressions, there's no bugs, there's no new bugs, there's no regressions that kind of come out of that, and your feature is bug free. Furthermore, the experience during this process was pretty positive. You were, sure, you were frustrated when you couldn't figure out something you were doing wrong or something that was a little confusing, but overall, you came to work every day during this thinking, okay, I'm looking forward to sort of working on this and getting it working a little more and understanding a little more, and then finally you're glad to have it done because not because I'm glad that's behind me, but because, okay, I feel good about that, and I know it will help the product in some way. So that future is kind of, again, it's kind of touchy-feely. There's no technology involved in that necessarily, but I have a hope that, by working through our code in an intentional way and designing things and doing something, I don't quite know what yet, we can get to the future that looks kind of like that, where there are fewer bugs and things are easier to develop for new features. And I come out of that, and I'm a sucker for one word or simple explanations, and so I come out of that and I think, hey, that's my hope, and so that's how empathy kind of goes into hope.
How is that different than just this is my goal? Hope has a faith aspect to it, I guess. That I have faith this is going to work out.
Goals have a plan aspect.
So they do. This, I do not claim this is a rational train of thought here at all, but the train of thought for me went from, what's that?
I'm just exploring.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's okay. Look, the simple goals are fewer bugs, easier and faster new feature development. So what would that look like if that were true? And then I came up with this little scenario I just told you about. And then at this point, I have no steps. I have no process for how to get there. But all I can tell other developers, other people in my company is, this is what I hope for. This is what it looks like.
Right.
What do you think about that? Does that look like a future you would like to have? How does that compare to how we do things currently? So that's kind of how I start with a goal, and then I come up with sort of fleshing out what it would look like if we meet that goal. And that's the hope.
The scary thing about utopias is that there's always a dark underbelly. I mean, I read Aldous Huxley.
Is that supposed to be Utopia?
Brave New World?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was totally Utopia, except for the whole killing everybody over 30.
I thought it was Logan's Run.
All right. Well,
was that Carnival?
Maybe it was Brave New World, too. I can't remember.
Anyway.
Well, that was Brave New World was like alphas and betas and gammas. Was that it? Was that Brave New World?
It was a drug. Anyway, we're getting off topic, and we all don't remember this book.
I'm a little dismayed that we went from hope to utopia to dystopia. So that's how it goes. What are you thinking there, Alicia?
Well, that is kind of my question. Is okay. So you have this hope, this utopia, and how do you really get there? I mean,
How do I get to the hoped for reality?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the path there is very unclear. How does it affect what you do now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me take you with the train of thought as I was kind of going from this goal of, fewer bugs, easier and faster new feature development. And then I have this hope where I kind of sketch out what it might look like to actually work in that sort of an environment if we actually achieve our goals. The thing that I realized is this, as I was kind of thinking through this, or thing that I was reminded of, is that what we hope for or what we kind of pay attention to actually changes our brains. And so if we hope for something, that something is more likely to come true than if we aren't looking for it. We tend to find what we're looking for, unlike what Bono says. We do tend to find what we're looking for. Having a goal and a hope that we can achieve that goal actually primes our minds to see things differently. It helps us focus on things that align with that goal. And there's a bunch of psych research about this, but there's a video on the web that was done by it's a video of an experiment, a psychological experiment, and what they did is they have, I think, about 7 or 8 people that are dribbling a basketball, and you, as the person viewing the video, are asked to count the number of times. I think some of the players are dressed in black uniforms and some in white uniforms, and I think they say count the number of times the ball is dribbled or the ball is passed by the people in the white uniforms, whatever it is. And we'll have a link in the show notes, hopefully, to the actual video, and you can watch it. And the video is like less than 2 minutes long, and so you sit there and you watch and you count. Okay, person in a white uniform passed to a person in a white uniform, and again. You get to like 7 or 8, whatever it is. You count it up, and like I said, it's less than 2 minutes. And the people in the black uniforms are passing to each other. The people in the white uniforms are passing to each other. You've honed in. You've been primed. You've been told, look for person in a white uniform passing to person in a white uniform, and you count, and they say at the end, okay, it was 8, and you counted 8. Great, you paid attention. And then they ask you, did you notice the person in the gorilla suit who walked through the video? And you think, well, no, that's crazy. And then you watch the video again, you go back and look at it again, and in fact, in the middle of the video, somebody walked right through the scene wearing, like a human being, wearing an ape or a gorilla
allegedly
costume.
A human being.
Allegedly a human. It could be a real gorilla, I have no idea. Stops, waves at the camera in the middle of the frame, in the middle of the scene, and then walks out. And they're probably on screen for like 15 seconds out of maybe a minute or minute and a half video. So it's not like 1 or 2 frames of video. They blur through. It's in there. But because your brain is primed, your brain is told, look for white uniform, passing to white uniform, basketball. That's it. Your brain ignores everything else. And I think the study I saw said that 50% of people who saw that video did not notice the gorilla walking through the frame or walking through the video. And the first time I saw it, I also didn't notice it at all. And I actually was wondering what kind of YouTube trickery was this that the monkey they must have put in the gorilla afterwards. But no, your brain is really good at seeing what you've been told to see. And so if you watch the video, there's actually a couple other things that happen in the video. I won't spoil the whole thing.
In a newer video, yeah.
Yeah, in the newer video, they've added a couple other things that you probably won't notice, and you'll be maybe surprised that you did, or maybe surprised that you didn't. And so in thinking through that and realizing that, attention definitely primes our brain, or rather having a goal or having hope or whatever, being told to focus on something, it primes our brain to pay attention to certain things. And so I started thinking through that a little bit more, and if we assume that our code is garbage, that our code is just bad, and that we have bit rot and we have entropy, and it's just going to make our code worse and worse, and there's really nothing we can do to help our code, we're going to be right. We're going to notice all the worst parts of the code. We're going to get more depressed and more cynical about it. We're going to talk about our code sarcastically and negatively, and we'll complain about it. You'll earn the right to say, I told you so. This code is terrible. I told you we couldn't make it any better. On the other hand, if you have hope that our software will improve, that it'll become easier to understand and extend it, and there'll be fewer bugs, then you'll also be right. You'll notice the good things in the code, and you'll think about how we can make it better, and how we can take the things that aren't good or aren't great right now and make them a little bit better step by step. And you'll earn the right to say, I helped make it better. Now, this sounds totally sort of like a little bit loopy, but I'm not being delusional here. What I'm suggesting is what I'm not suggesting is that we lie to ourselves and we say that our code's awesome. It's only going to get better. We're never going to have bugs. I'm not suggesting any dishonesty or trickery or anything even remotely approaching that. What I am suggesting is that we intentionally pick a worthy goal, that this hope that I'm espousing, and that we have hope that we can achieve that goal through hard work. So I just said a lot. Does that make sense? Does that sound at all believable, or does that sound like I'm trying to sell you something?
Well, for me, I've read a bunch of psych books. And so attentional focus is one of those things that they tell you is very important in humans. There are lots of ways to fool people by taking away their attention. That's how magic and mentalism works. You tell somebody the number 3 when they walk up, and then 5 minutes later when you ask them for a number, there's a good chance they're going to say the number 3, even though they forgot that they had that attention. Mm-hmm. And so if you pay more attention to the positive things, not ignoring the negative, just more attention, saying thank you to your coworkers, noticing when people did something nice, noticing when the check-in comments were actually relevant. These things, they do help you find other things that are good, other areas of positivity, and they are likely to help you mentally weather the storms of bit rot. Okay, so we have that. You also had a thing about people hoping for themselves, like imagining a better code base.
Yes.
That sounded a little depressing to me. I mean, when I imagine a better code base, it's like, well, I can't get there. I don't have the power to make it happen.
Yes, it absolutely could be. That's another psychological thing where if we feel like we don't have any control and we don't have any power, and things are bad, that's a lousy place to be. So I'm guessing your next question is going to be like, what can I do if I'm not in a position of leadership? I'm not in a position of, no one does what I tell them to do. If I make suggestions, I don't get heard. If you're kind of the low person on the totem pole and you feel like you don't have a lot of authority or autonomy,
you don't have to be the low person
on
the totem pole for that.
Sorry. Perhaps the higher you go in the totem pole, the less change you can actually make happen.
Sometimes it feels that way.
I'm sure. I don't have a great, there is no silver bullet. In fact, what I can suggest is I actually came across a blog post recently from Seth Godin, who is this marketing guru, and he has a lot of pithy statements, but a lot of them ring true. And he's got this post recently called 3 Wishes, and it's similar. Basically, he says when you're feeling stuck with a project, when you are feeling like things are bad, you can't figure out what to do next, he says grab 3 index cards, and on each card write down an element of the project that if you invested time and money would change for the better. And if those 3 things happened, if those 3 things that you wrote on your index card actually changed, what would happen to your project, or what would happen to your little part of the project, or your file, or your bug, or whatever it is you're working on? And he ends it in a very Seth Godin sort of style where he says, okay, now that you've got all these 3 ideas and on the cards, what are you going to do about it? And it's kind of a dare. It's kind of audacious. It's kind of saying, okay, so you have the mental capacity to think, like IBM used to say, to think about what can be improved. And you've just written them down on a card. And that means you have it staring at you in black and white. And so what are you going to do about it? So first of all, I have to back up. So what we're talking about here with hope and with improving your code base is like way up on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So if you have a truly toxic workplace, if you are truly, it's just a bad place to work, I don't know that any of this stuff can work. But if you're at a reasonable place to work, which I hope that you are, then you should have some time in your day where you can do some work that isn't necessarily on your, you must do this next because the project is shipping in 15 minutes work. Now, okay, if the project is shipping in 15 minutes, you should probably just do that work. But
no, it should be out of your hands.
Yeah, that's true. If it should really show, I guess if you're a web developer, 15 minutes, you push an update, and with OTA, with over-the-air updates, you can push it to robots all over the world. Why not? But you should be able to carve an hour out of your week I would hope that you could carve an hour out of your week to do one of those things on your index cards. And if the index card ideas you have are all like rewrite software in different, better language or some other similar things, maybe you should get smaller index cards, or maybe just start with like those little tiny sticky notes, at least for that size of idea. But if you can think about moving things forward 1%, improving things 1% a quarter or 3% a quarter, then after a year, you'll have things at least, 12% better, whatever. The math doesn't work out like that. But my thought here is that if you can just move the ball down the field a little bit every month, a little bit every week, a little bit every day, then eventually that adds up. And you may not feel that you have, you probably don't feel empowered at your job to make across the board changes to say, we're going to change everything and we're going to do it this way now. And even if you could, you'd probably be wrong if you just start making decrees from the top and, you don't know everything. Your coworkers don't know everything. So you probably want things to be smaller changes, more iterative changes that come in over time instead of a giant hammer that changes everything all at once anyway. So making these small changes, 1%, 2%, 3% at a time, a quarter, a week, a month, a year, whatever, as those build up, hopefully, again, there's that word hope, will lead to some of these better goals. If everyone's hope is that, fewer bugs, easier, faster development, you'll start to see opportunities to do 1%, 2%, 3% improvements over time. You put them on a list, you prioritize them, and then as a team or as an individual, you knock them down. And hopefully over time things get better.
So I still think this requires, in a lot of places, some buy-in from people who control your work life. Because most places are doing some form of Scrum/Agile these days. And so all work shows up on the big board with points associated with it. So it's very hard to do kind of stealth tech debt improvement and have it fly under the radar. Somebody's going to see it. Somebody's going to say, there's a potential for somebody to say, well, why are you doing that now instead of this over here? I didn't allow you to bring that ticket into this sprint. So... And that's not necessarily toxic. It's sort of toxic, but is it, most people wouldn't characterize that as this organization is broken. So do you have any thoughts about how to get around that sort of thing? Or is it just get buy-in?
Well, yeah, I did totally focus on like the smaller stuff. So everything I kind of talked about in a very long-winded way was the smaller stuff, the stuff that you could add into a sprint, into a current story, maybe document it better, maybe, add another unit test or do something that doesn't look like, I'm doing a completely different line of work than I should be doing. So on the larger work, then I think the way you start that is you have to, you can try to find another like-minded individual on your team or in your group and, start talking about, hey, man, I really wish that this would be better. I really wish that this unit test infrastructure would be a little bit easier to write. Or man, this piece of code over here, I am scared to wander into this file because it is a bunch of untested, or it's a bunch of code that has no tests. And every time someone touches it, it seems to break about 50 times until we, smash all the bugs again. I wonder what we could do about that. I wonder if we could kind of make that better. The trick here is, especially if you go talk to your boss, if you have a one-on-one, say, this file over here seems to get buggier over time. I wonder what we can do about that. And by asking people for your opinions, first of all, you're saying, hey, here's this thing, and it's broken, and it's not as good as it could be. I see that it could be better. What do you think we could do about it? So you're having your colleagues and your boss kind of shared ownership of a solution. And as more people start to think about things like this, your boss says, that unit test infrastructure is kind of rickety, or that file is kind of a bug farm. If you come in with data and say, hey, look, literally every time this file changes, we get 2 more bug reports, from customers. Maybe we should do something about that. And that is a way to kind of market. And this is I'm using the word marketing intentionally here. This is the way to market your ideas and sort of sell others in your organization, your boss or your scrum master or the project owner or whoever needs to be sold on things, but say, hey, here is a problem for the customer. Here is a problem for the product. How can we fix it? What if we tried X to fix it? What if we did this work to fix it? What if we, you're suggesting solutions, or you're trying to gather people's ideas on solutions. And the problems you're solving are problems that the customer has, problems the product has, problems the organization has, not, I want to go rewrite this thing in a different language because I think it would be fun.
That's hard. That's really hard.
Yep, it totally is. It totally is hard to do this kind of stuff.
So I see why you're using a positive, optimistic word like hope to describe this, because otherwise the words I would choose would be less positive.
Like what?
Slog, political maneuvering, manipulating for results, tech debt. Just, tech debt doesn't sound very good. Addressing really tech debt, nobody likes paying their debts. The terms we tend to use for this sort of stuff are fairly negative or have negative connotations. So, I get what you're doing.
Yep.
Yep. And I think it's a good idea, but
the interesting thing about tech debt is that it is a very negative word. I feel like when things get thrown into tech debt, you're working on something, you want to ship it in a month, and we would really like to make X better, but we don't have time now because we need to ship something. So we're going to put that task label it as tech debt, right? That is the correct decision. There is nothing negative about that. I mean, debt is kind of a bad word, right? But really, it's a deferred feature. It's a deferred change, and we are making the right decision to keep customers happy, to keep the revenue coming in so that the lights stay on, that my salary or my paycheck keeps clearing the bank. Like, there's nothing bad about that decision at all. If there's no sort of similar business argument where basically we get more revenue, or we do not lose revenue by doing some tech debt, then I would argue maybe there's no reason to actually do the tech debt. Maybe that's just a feature you don't ever do. The stuff that I talked about, the goals that I set out at the beginning of this, fewer bugs and easier and faster new feature development, those are chosen because those are things that are good for the business, that are good for the customer, that keep revenue coming in, that increase revenue, that let us sell more products faster, that make customers happier with our products because there's not more bugs in them. You have to choose the right features, the right bugs to fix, the right tech debt to take on, and tie it to a business case and an actual value to the company. Otherwise, you're just rewriting something in a new language because you feel like solving a new technical problem instead of a problem that actually generates revenue for the company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think tech debt without any justification for it is not really tech debt, right? It's something I'd like to change. That's not necessarily valid. But I think with your goals of better, faster development, fewer bugs, oftentimes tech debt feeds into that, where I can't work as fast as I would if this particular module was organized better, or if the build system was more efficient, or those kinds of things. So I think it makes sense. But you have to, but those kinds of things, like it would make us better as engineers, are hard to quantify. So if you are talking to management and saying, look, we want to do this, it's kind of hard to go in there and say it'll make us better, but we don't know how much.
Yep. And that's, that's where some of the hard work comes in. And, it's tough. Jack Gansel, one of the things I've taken his Better Firmware Faster seminar, a couple times. And one of his main things is if you do nothing else, start counting bugs, start tracking bugs. And if only so you can see that, okay, we had 10 this week and 9 this week and 8 the week after and 7 the week after. So, okay, we're getting better. Or the other way around, we had 10 this week and 20 next week and 100 next week after that. We're getting worse. Basically, if you don't measure something, then you're going to have a hard time sort of responding to it. You're going to have a hard time understanding it. And so as you're trying to figure out what to do, any way you can quantify it is going to, first of all, make you understand it better. So if you can count the bugs you have, if you can, try to relate how many changes to a file result in bugs, try to figure out where the bad parts of your code are, how long it takes to do a build, a complete unit test, clean build of your system, or how long it takes to check out your code and do a complete Jenkins build of, or whatever. Any way you can quantify it, then you can see, are things getting worse or things getting better? And you can, if you can go to your manager and say, look, it takes 2 hours from the time I hit go to get back the result of, is the build clean and did the test pass, before I can make a commit. And during that time, I'm effectively stalled and I can't do anything else. And I can go work on another ticket, but it sure would be great. And here's my idea for taking that time from 2 hours to 1 hour. And by the way, since most cloud builds or most builds are done in the cloud nowadays, that actually saves money. Like if you can cut your build time down in half, that cuts your AWS build down in half, or whatever cloud system you're using. So there's some metrics that you can use that actually help the business and that are sane. Again, we're not tricking anyone. I mean, you're not trying to game the system, but hey, look, here's an actual benefit we can measure, and I think by reducing by half will make our development flow faster, and we'll get new products out faster.
Chris asked Christopher, my co-host, my husband, asked about.
I'm fully identified now.
Not quite, but I'll stop there. Asked about where this goes in a Scrum, but I have it, and that's part of my question here. Also, you mentioned rewrite it in a different language as a goal, which I know you're using as kind of not a good goal, but we all know that somebody wrote that down as their goal. And you're talking about an hour to a week, which I think, yeah, okay, that's doable. But how do we figure out if I think this code should be rewritten is about this hope and optimism and having fewer bugs and writing faster versus know-it-allism? That's a realism, right?
This would be better. You've done it wrong.
If only you followed my path, it would be better.
And here's the path.
And if you don't, you're all idiots. And you should know that the code will be slower to develop. Really, you should just go ahead and rewrite it in Rust. I didn't need to go there. But, okay, so backing up before the language change, there is some of this. There is some of this if we just...
Well, that goes back to empathy. You can't do this without empathy. I think that's the thing, this falls apart if you don't have a team that's conscientious and has some, cohesion.
But it's really hard to have people come in and say we should change all this stuff when
right. No, I
have features to finish.
Yeah. So what the way that I think this might work best, and the reason that I suggested, backing up a little bit, the reason I suggested, start talking this over with a colleague, talk it over with your boss, talk it over at lunch with your friends from your team, or even you're not friends from your team. Start talking these things over and kind of socializing them. And you're not trying to trick anyone. You're just trying to say, hey, I think this is a problem. What do you think? And if everyone else looks at you like they don't know what you're talking about and they love the way the build system works, so they see no problem with it, maybe you're not going to get a lot of traction with it, and maybe that's not a thing that will be changed. What I'm not suggesting is that someone comes in, me or anyone else, no matter how senior, comes in and says, all right, we're doing it wrong. We're going to scrap what we're doing. And instead we're going to do A, B, C, D. That's all we're doing. And I don't care what you're working on. I don't care what any of you think, but sort of by decree, we're doing this. I don't think that's the right way to do anything. I don't know. I just don't think that's going to work for a number of reasons. I think what's better is, you start sort of socializing an idea, shopping it around, seeing if other people on your team can kind of get behind the idea of I wonder what is kind of painful, what is kind of annoying to do. And then once you get a list of 5, 6, 7, 10 things that are kind of annoying to do, then, and by annoying, I'm saying this code seems buggy. This code seems slow. The build system isn't as fast as it can be, or this thing is not deterministic, or, whatever sort of things you want. What I've actually done at work is someone else suggested a title. And so basically I asked my coworkers, I said, hey, all right, we're going to start having more time to develop, to kind of step back and do some more architectural higher level work. What things should we focus on? Because, I've been at iRobot 6 years. I know a lot of the code, but I don't know more of the code than I know, right? We have a lot of code here. And so I said, hey, what kinds of things bother people? I said this in a team meeting, which is specifically for this. And so someone said, oh, you mean like airing of grievances? And so now we have a wiki page that is called the Airing of Grievances, which is inspired by Festivus from Seinfeld. And on this Airing of Grievances wiki page, any of us in the company can go in and put the parts of the software that we think are broken or slow or frustrating. And I've got about a dozen things on there, maybe 10 things on there that I put a few on there to kind of prime it. And then other people have slowly been adding different things as they run into, wow, this branching strategy is painful, or this code over here, the way we do GPIO abstraction kind of breaks when you use header files like this. And they're across the board. There's some things that we can never fix and some things that could actually be fixed in about 5 minutes. Once we have enough things in that list, we can shop this around to management. We can shop this around to coworkers. As people sort of see this as a problem, then we can start saying, okay, hey, boss, what do you say we put a ticket in to fix one of these next time? And then I think there's fewer bugs as a result of this, or I think there'll be, something better as a result of it. There's absolutely no guarantee that your manager is going to buy into it. There's no guarantee that your product manager or whoever's doing your story, Scrum sprint decisions is going to buy into this. But the only way to even give them a chance at agreeing to it is to have a list and have some justification and suggest it.
This sounds exhausting. You've asked me to give up my lunch to do political maneuverings. You've asked me to talk to my coworkers and invent new work when we should be shipping a product. You've asked me to spend free time that I could be spending writing funny Twitter jokes, instead worrying about the companies who doesn't really care for me.
Wow.
That's pretty cynical.
I think I'm going to shorten that. You've asked me to cast aside my well-honed cynic instincts for optimism, and that might be difficult.
That is difficult.
How do you turn people into optimists?
Optimists are suckers.
Optimists are suckers. They are such suckers. They are, however, happier and they live longer. So maybe you sell them on that.
Yeah, they probably wrote that study.
They probably did. They probably did. Oh man, but yeah. I mean, it's true. So tech nerds, we love cynicism. We love snark, and we love.
I don't. I'm starting to hate it.
You're starting to hate snark?
Yeah.
You're over snarked?
I'm over snarked.
Well, cynicism is part of showing geek cred.
Yes.
And
it is, isn't it?
And while I might have actually tricked you into this, I do want to point out you were the last person to post Endgate to our Slack channel.
I enjoy snarky humor and cynicism as much as the next person. However, so I started my career at AMD, which is a great company to work for. Designed chips there for a long time. I started there. I was fresh out of grad school, and I started in July, I think. And I think in July or maybe July or August, they announced, hey, guess what? In October, we are laying 20% of the company off. And so,
welcome to the company.
I'm coming out of school. I started work in 2002. So the tech job market was not in a great place. My wife couldn't find a job because a lot of things were just not great economically in 2002. And, it was August, and I knew that I had basically until October. And then I'm thinking, look, I'm the new guy on the team. Of course I'm getting laid off. But you just kind of sit there and wait for 3 months. And I think that, dialed my cynicism and my negativity about job stuff up to 11.
Yes.
Right. And so I did not get laid off, thankfully, and I ended up being at AMD for a number of years after that, and ended up leaving of my own free will. But sort of the die was cast, and I was quite cynical, and a lot of people in tech are cynical, and so it's easy to find fellow cynics. I would come home and I would, make cynical comments around my wife or to my wife. And eventually she was just like, wow, this is really negative. Why are you this negative? Even if, parts of your job aren't great, it's bleeding over into the home life. It's bleeding over into my,
why are you looking at me like that?
It was just cynical. What's that?
Nothing. I'm getting laser eyes from across the room.
Laser cynic eyes, laser cynic wife eyes.
I think she was identifying with your story about bringing home. Anyway, yes.
Yes. Yeah. It is very easy to bring home a negative attitude. I feel like it might be easier to bring home a negative attitude than it is to bring home a positive attitude. But, so of course I was cynical about my wife's pointing out my cynicism, and I was like, whatever. Right. Cause you gotta double down, right? That's what you do as a good husband who has a wife who loves you and gives you, useful feedback in a loving way. Is you just double down on your stupid behavior. But anyway, that's what I did. And thankfully, over the last, 5 to 10 years, I've sort of come around to realize that maybe being cynical all the time is actually not the best view. And you can actually intentionally change that. You can find yourself, the very first step is to just notice when you're being cynical. It's a very Zen thing. You're not actually trying to change your behavior. Just try to notice, when are you being cynical? And when you have a lunch conversation, or when you have whatever, or listening to a podcast, and if you have cynical thoughts, just recognize that. Just say, oh, there it was. I was kind of snarky. I was kind of cynical. I thought this is a stupid idea. And you might be right. Everything I'm saying right now could be completely stupid and asinine, and that's okay. But recognize when you are being cynical, especially in a work context, and then start to think what would the opposite be? What would it be like to not see bad decisions or not to see bugs as a happy thing? Oh, I'm glad I got a bug. We're not talking about that, but instead start seeing the things that are positive. Start seeing, oh, hey, my coworker helped explain something to me. Oh, look at this code. It actually is designed really well and makes a lot of sense to me. Oh, look at this little, behavior that the robot did. That's someone worked hard on that and it works really well. Whatever. You start thinking about, oh, I wonder if I can find the positive things. And eventually I have zero science on this. I have zero data on this. But you can change your mindset by noticing when it is cynical and negative. And I guess I'm theorizing that you can change your mindset by noticing when you're negative and try to find positive things. And eventually you can swing yourself to being a little more hopeful, a little more positive, and a little bit less cynical. If you think that cynicism is something that you kind of want to change and maybe have a more positive outlook if you can.
That goes back to the attentional focus. If you actually think about, okay, I just noticed, I was mindful that I was being sarcastic, being snarky. Now I want to cue myself to do something positive, to put my attention towards a positive direction, towards somebody doing something nice, towards being interested in the problem I'm solving, towards the application of what I'm doing and thinking about I'm doing this in service to something good. Yeah. You should, once your attention has been trained to go somewhere else, there's lots of studies that show that.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't answered my question much about, this is a lot more work for me.
Yes. I'm not asking people to start putting in, 4 hours extra every evening to start doing this stuff. This is something that is going to require time and thought. And there's a quote that kind of hit me a while ago that I've actually been coming back to for a lot of stuff at work, especially when things get kind of difficult. And it's a quote. It's by I read Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, and in it she quotes Barack Obama, and she says, "What's better for us? Do we settle for the world as it is, or do we work for the world as it should be?" And so, regardless of what you think about Obama's politics, the sentence is, what's better for us? Do we settle for the world as it is, or do we work for the world as it should be? So, you can sort of let things be and keep doing what you're doing, or you can try to make it better. That does not answer your question about, why are you asking me to do more work? Is this going to take more hours out of my day? That is sort of justifying why you'd even want to do any more work. And that was to sort of, we have a hope for something, so we want to work towards the hope for a world as it should be. How do you find time for that? How do you make time for that? How do you take extra time for that? I don't have a good answer there.
I think in a perfect world, or a good world, or at a good company, you shouldn't have to make extra time for it, because doing this stuff should be a force multiplier as time goes on. It's an investment that should pay off. So taking time away from feature development or what have you to those kinds of things and to move toward a better, more efficient organization should pay for itself. But
yep.
I do take Alicia's point that, and I kind of made the same point, is some organizations will have more pushback and you will have to exert more effort. And that's just, it depends on how committed you are to making things better, I guess.
Yep. No, the sort of how committed you are and sort of how far you're willing to stick your neck out and sort of what level of effort you're willing to give at work, that kind of dances around the issue of professionalism. And so, we are paid to work, hopefully. And when you're at work, you are by definition, like when you're being paid to work, you are by definition a professional, right? Software engineers, whether you're, a CS or a compy or a physics or whatever you are, you're working writing software, you're working doing electrical engineering, we're professionals. And as professionals, we're being paid to do good work. Now, we can slack off, or we can work 1 million hours a week, or something in between, some optimal level of effort. But you get to choose what being a professional at work means. I believe that worthwhile professional work should result in a better future. and I'm saying this one that I'm hoping for is the future that I'm sort of betting on, and that's the one I want to work towards. You can state your goals at work and look, I'm a professional. I want to make these changes. I want to have these force multipliers as something we do. I want to make things better in these ways. And you can make the statement as a professional. I see that professionalism and kind of what you see yourself as at work and the change you try to make at work and the work you try to do at work. I see that as part of professionalism.
I understand that. I understand using professionalism as an excuse to do the right thing. And it's something I kind of agree with. Sometimes it's good to say, no, I didn't finish my bug this week. I still have to write the documentation for it. Or no, I didn't finish my bug this week because I didn't finish all of the unit tests. You don't have to skimp. Now, you have to make a good balance between dotting every I and crossing every T and then rewriting it in 3 different languages, or shipping things as fast as possible and not worrying about anything at all as far as tech debt goes. But you do get to define your level of professionalism.
Mm-hmm. And I like that. I like that bug. Like you're not done with the feature or with the story or with the ticket because you haven't been writing all the unit tests. I want to go into that a little bit. And so let's say you spend a day on a ticket and on a bug, and you figured it out, and you know the fix, and you've got some hacky kind of half fix, you have a hacky fix that you want to improve, but you know what the bug is and you know how to fix it. Let's say it takes you 4 hours to fix the bug, and it would take you 4 hours to write some extra unit tests for it. What I would probably do is I'd spend the 4 hours to sort of fix the bug right. And then if anyone asked me, I would say, yeah, I'm done, but I still have to write the unit tests. That gives someone the opportunity to say, just check it in and move on. We don't have time to test. If, however, I'm already aware of the fix and already know what the fix is, maybe I spend the first 4 hours writing the unit test, or the first 2 hours, fixing tests for it or writing new tests for it. And only then do I start writing the fix. And then if someone asks me after 4 hours, are you done with it? You can say, no, I've got a couple more hours work on it, I think. And then, it's plus or minus 2 or 4 hours on a given story. I don't think that, in a 40-hour week, 2 or 4 hours really shows up on anyone's schedule. I know that, 4 hours is 10% of a 40-hour work week, but has your schedule ever been off by only 10% on any project you've ever worked on? I don't know. Maybe this is not a good idea, but that's kind of my thinking. Does that make sense?
Well, then you don't have to do it with every ticket. Your goal is to build a better world one step at a time. You don't have to go from your velocity of 20 points a week to velocity of 3 points a week because suddenly you have the shield of professionalism out, and
yes,
you do have to balance and choose your battles.
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly, yes, that's definitely much better than I said it there. That, the thing I said at the beginning, you're going for 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% a quarter. If you can get that much better, that will absolutely pile up. And you never have to say, hey, I need a month to do this new task. Instead, you just kind of wisely schedule it in when you can. But not every ticket, not every time, just like you said, Alicia.
Let me ask you a slightly different question. I'm going to go on beyond the question for a second, so don't just start answering. But how do you maintain momentum with something like this? Let's say you get it started and things are going great for 2-3 sprints, and people have, they've established the things they hope for. They've got them written down, and they're making small changes every week towards those. I've been involved in some of these kind of working groups to improve things, and they didn't, use the same language, but it's kind of the same stuff where it's like, okay, here's a problem, and we're all going to work toward a better solution, and they fizzle out within like 2 months, and then somebody says, hey, what was happening with that? Oh, yeah, we should get back to that. Do you have any ideas on how to maintain some velocity with this?
Yeah. So I've seen the exact same thing happen. It's any change initiative, anything that changes is hard to kind of keep up, right? It's especially something that's, sounds like a good idea. Fewer bugs, happier work environment, whatever. It's all good, right? And it's easy until it gets a little bit long in the tooth. So the only way that I can think of this kind of keeps up is to have someone and several people, if possible, whose job is to do this kind of work. Is that you have, actually, I guess there's two things. One, I think the team and your manager and your management above your media boss has to buy into it, as we're not just going to do, today's work. We're going to start thinking about next year's work and 2 years now from work, and what kind of work can we do now to leverage our time now and have it, pay off in multiples later. So you need your manager to buy off on it, and hopefully their manager as well. If you can get people whose job is, I hate the word architecture because it sounds like it's this like pie in the sky kind of thing. But if you can get someone whose job is not tomorrow's feature, but instead next year's code base, or the next 3 products you want to develop, how can we make the code as modular and reusable as possible? If you can get people whose full-time job is doing that kind of work, then that is their work, that is their stories, that is their sprints. This is not something that a team of 3 that is the only engineers of the company that are shipping something next month. They're not going to take one third of their team and say, you go work on work for next year. But at a certain size, an organization should hopefully have enough money in the bank and enough like recurring revenue that they can dedicate 1, 2, 3, 5, however many people to sort of more leverage. The company's going to be around in a year. No one's worried about that. How can we make sure that next year when we want to introduce 3 products instead of just 1, that we can do that easier and faster? So that's kind of that's the role that I have at the company right now, and that's kind of my hope for how things play out.
It's funny. Despite being a little argumentative, I really agree with your base notion that the way to get to a better environment, to get to a better coding system, to be able to do your job more fulfillingly, is to have hope and positivity, and to imagine what would be better. But when you bring in management and upper level management and teams and architects, I stop buying it because I usually work in very small teams, and for them, they just need to go, go, go. And I don't feel like I have the power to slow them down. I do have the power to be professional, and I can slow them down that way. And I can try to do a little bit of what you were saying about predicting the future and how can I make this better? And what are my 3 wishes? And those help me try to figure out how to make my job better. But I don't go in for the making nice with everyone and the political and the socializing my ideas. I really like the hope message though. So you'll have to come to the party so we can have a thumb war and duke it out.
Excellent. I don't know if this works for smaller teams. I don't know if I don't know if it works for us, but this is the path I'm choosing. So we'll see what happens to us. We're big enough that we can, I do not speak for iRobot at all, but if your company is big enough that you can afford 1, 2, 3, 4 people to do something that's not, revenue dependent tomorrow, then I think this might be a good way to sort of get things better. I also want to one more point is that, one of the things that we're cynical about in tech is, bad decisions that are made elsewhere in the organization. Can you believe that this company did that, or that this other company did that, or that, HR changed this policy or whatever. We kind of grouse about stuff like that. You end up with a sort of a feeling of powerlessness if you just concentrate on the things that you can't control and you get upset about them. Not to say that, everything that you can't control, it should be a pleasant, happy experience for you. But if you care about things at work that are in your control, you're going to have a much more positive sort of work environment. If you get if you get upset and are constantly holding on to things that bother you at work, but that you have no control over, you're going to feel powerless, and you are powerless because you can't control whatever it is we're talking about, and you're going to feel kind of bad about it. If somehow you can focus more on the things that you can control than the things that you can't control, and you do 1%, 2%, 3% better on the things that you can control, I think that's one way to sort of make things better. And, this 3 wishes thing, you can do some of that at a small company or a small group, or, even if you are shipping something next week, maybe you can make things, 1% better a quarter instead of 4% a quarter. But if you concentrate on things that you can control, you have less frustration about things you can't control, and you can do these onesie, twosie percent improvements over time. There's some political nature to what I'm talking about. The whole like selling it to management, selling it to coworkers. The politics that I'm thinking of is kind of the sort of, this is how you communicate in a work environment sort of politics, not the backdoor politics where you're like lying and, backstabbing kind of thing, but instead, hey, here's what I think. If anyone agrees with me, let's talk about it some more. So I hope that's a more palatable form of it, but yeah, I get where you're coming from, Alicia. And I mean, Chris, you said, well, you guys are like pushing back or whatever, but this is great. Like, I don't know if this is going to work, but this is what I'm trying to check back with me in a year. And I'll tell you if my hopes are dashed and if I'm just sad again, but I hope not.
There's one more question about sort of this whole thing. And I wonder, as you think about fewer bugs and faster development, mistakes. We are often afraid as professional programmers, engineers, of making mistakes, of being caught in mistakes, of having people notice our mistakes. And yet, when you look at the maker community, they celebrate the mistakes. Mm-hmm. Where we often try to hide or deny or yell so that nobody notices them. How do we make making mistakes less humiliating?
Anonymous commits.
Anonymous commits. Yes. Squash all history. Squash all history and have all commits be anonymous. And change jobs every 6 months so no one can find you either. No, I mean, this has to be a cultural thing. This has to be something that, the thought of celebrating mistakes has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because like you don't want to encourage mistakes for the sake of mistakes, but you don't want to punish a mistake. So as a senior person, the only thing I can do is sort of do things by example. And so I try to publicly, and as often as I make a mistake, say, oh, that was my bad. I screwed that up. And then I screwed it up because I was thinking XYZ, but in fact it was ABC. Or, sort of owning up to your mistakes and saying publicly, like in your team meeting or in your team Slack group or whatever it is, and saying, oh yeah, that bug, that was me. And furthermore, here's why that bug was made. And here's the error in my thinking. And okay, that's it. And again, I have all kinds of privilege. And so, I realize I'm coming from a position of being able to say that. And I'm sure not everybody can say that. And again, I've only got my experiences to go by, but I've seen other people on my team do the same thing, especially really senior people. And that, I'm hoping, makes it easier for everyone to say, oh yeah, I made a mistake too. No biggie. If your company...
Setting an example.
Setting an example. That's a much more succinct way than my long-winded thing.
We've covered a lot of things, and I think some of that we can use. Some of it I could definitely go in to work tomorrow and use, and some of it I couldn't, but I could see other people using it. I guess maybe we've covered it all. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think I have one way to sum up at least some of this, and hopefully this is something that anyone can kind of take away from it. And it's that I encourage people to kind of step back, blank sheet of paper, and make a conscious and deliberate decision for what to focus on and what to care about. And specifically in a work context is what we're talking about here. But, beyond work as well. Choose what matters to you at work and what you can control at work and what you want to change at work and improve at work. And, when the act of doing that, the act of sitting down and spending active time thinking about that will be a benefit to you and your group. And even if you can't act on it all right away, just having the thoughts, I think, will tilt you in a slightly more positive, we can change things for the better, hopeful mindset. And I think that will pay dividends.
I think so too. I think it will pay dividends across your career. Maybe not even across this job, but across your career. Our guest has been Chris Svec, software lead at iRobot.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. This was great. Thanks for all the questions and making me think harder about this stuff. It's been great.
I would like to remind listeners that our party is happening on September 7th in Aptos, California. If you want an invite, you have to go to embedded300.eventbrite.com and sign up there. You shouldn't have to sign up for a bunch of stuff. Just put an RSVP yes on. If you want a mug, they are on Zazzle, where you can search for us, or you can go into the support on embedded.fm, or it will be in the show notes. There will be a link in the show notes. And now, thank you. Thank you to Chris Svec for sharing this idea with us. Thank you to Christopher White for producing and co-hosting, and thank you for listening. You can always contact us at show@embedded.fm or hit the contact link on embedded.fm. If you cannot remember embedded300.eventbrite.com, you can hit the contact link on embedded.fm and I will send it to you. I'm not putting that in the show notes. It's only for listeners. And now a quote to leave you with. Well, actually, a whole quote controversy. I wanted to have the quote to leave you with be Eleanor Roosevelt's, it's far better to light the candle than curse the darkness. But a little bit of searching told me that was not said by Eleanor Roosevelt, or was not originally said. Instead, quote, investigator puts it by William Watkinson. And still, it is far better to light the candle than curse the darkness. Embedded is an independently produced radio show that focuses on the many aspects of engineering. It is a production of Logical Elegance, an embedded software consulting company in California. If there are advertisements in the show, we did not put them there and do not receive money from them. At this time, our sponsors are Logical Elegance and listeners like you.